All right, guys, that was great. It was so lovely to see Noah again and hear about his journey with Boom and Plex and MoonPay. I know we kind of dived into a little bit of a rabbit hole talking about Plex and being a young entrepreneur on campus. But again, I felt like that was kind of the whole point of this to really focus on those early steps that people can take. But now, someone who is on campus themselves, we've got Braeden Riley who will be joining us right here as he gets connected. Braeden is at the University of Utah, and he is a resident at Lasan Studios. Braeden, you are muted, but you are live in here. Welcome to the STRT Summit. Thank you for joining us.
Hi there. Yeah, happy to attend. Great to talk to you.
Now, please, would you just give the folks a little bit of a background about yourself and Homebrew?
Absolutely. I am currently a sophomore here at the David Eccles School of Business at the University of Utah. I run a company called Homebrew. We essentially make services for small businesses. We focus a lot on web apps that are specifically designed for the very early stage entrepreneur, someone who doesn't have a lot of experience building a company, and giving them the resources they need to really accessibly get into the start of their venture.
And before I have you dive into the slides, I know you prepared some. I was just curious what really drove you to building these tools initially. I mean, as soon as you got on campus, this kind of came right out of your head, and you started taking those steps to build it. So what drove you to this idea specifically?
Yeah, well, honestly, when it came down to it, I had tried to run something in the past and I failed terribly. I know that's part of entrepreneurship, but I was running a tech repair company and I had no idea how to handle funds. I was terrified of messing up my taxes. I was terrified of the LLC business. And so ultimately, I just kind of let the company die out because I just wasn't able to really kind of commit to it. And I realized that that's a problem that a lot of entrepreneurship, people getting into entrepreneurship have today, where there's so many resources available for you. There's also so many liabilities that you kind of get caught up in the muss, and it makes it really confusing to get started. So Homebrew was kind of a response to that, providing a lot of accessibility to entrepreneurs kind of at that early start.
No, amazing. I love that. Especially like having your first business start out and realizing that maybe you don't have the tools or you don't feel certain in the tools that you have and deciding that there's probably other people like you who have the same questions and fears and going out and helping to build those tools to eliminate those fears and those challenges.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it's all about. It was a terrifying experience to get started, but I think we've smoothed out quite nicely since then.
I think just that goes hand in hand with Noah, what Noah was just saying that as you kind of continue forward and start to experience the scary things more often, then it becomes a little less scary and you get a little more comfortable. But as is with most in life, the more you do it, the better you are at it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So the floor is yours for the slides that you have, and as well as I'll jump in as needed or as you'd like with any questions from the audience or even myself as we go through to kind of tie it all back into the theme of progress.
Perfect. That sounds good. Well, I will get started. Okay. So, hi there, Braeden Riley. When I was thinking about what I would present on for a keynote for the START Summit, I really wanted to focus on the kind of piece of advice I really wish that I had when I had started. It came from a lot of uncertainty, which is what I tried to build Homebrew around, is reducing that uncertainty, reducing that anxiety when you're just starting off in your business. And so I created this little kind of thought process in being able to balance the different domains in your life, and I call that balancing act. So that's what our presentation is about today. Um, so, as a little introduction, my name is Braeden Riley. I'm a student at the University of Utah, and I run a company called Homebrew. We talked a little bit about how we kind of provide services to small businesses through the internet and providing kind of web apps that are a bit more accessible than some of the more complex services found online today. I'm also a student director of the Lasan Founders Program. Lasan Studios is the University of Utah's Entrepreneurship Institute, and they focus on getting people from uh, students who have never started a company in life to people who have functioning, successful businesses. I also work at Lassonde Studios, which is the living learning community provided by Lassonde. It's where student entrepreneurs can live and work on their companies with office space and with services specifically to help companies start up. So I realized very early on in my company that starting up a business is a series of balancing acts to make sure that everything is kind of functioning at its peak optimality. And in the same way, life is like that a lot too. And so I started to kind of view my business as its own living thing, as its own, life, where there are different domains within the business. And I tried to apply that to my own life because I was realizing as I was working on my company and I was working on my schooling, it was very hard to kind of combine the two. It was very overwhelming in a lot of ways where I couldn't devote full attention to either one. So they both started to have some difficulties. And so from that became my kind of balancing act, where I can divide my experience as a student entrepreneur into four main categories, which would be entrepreneurial ventures, that being Homebrew, educational pursuits, my experience as a student within the University of Utah, my work responsibilities, where I can actually make money to help start my own business and have a job, and then personal life, so I don't go crazy from being overworked. And we're going to go into these a little bit, and then I'm going to talk about how I was able to, uh, at least partially successfully, work to combine them and balance everything up. In terms of entrepreneurial ventures, Homebrew was founded in 2022, just before I left for college. And like I said, when I started my first company, I had no idea how to handle it. And so it eventually fizzled out. Homebrew was a much more concerted effort, and largely with the help of Lassonde Studios, which is the entrepreneurial hub at the University of Utah. I was able to get it to a much more stable point with resources in business development and LLC filing. Personal creation of your company was a lot easier. I now have over 20 corporate clients that are secured with my small business consultation services. And I'm in the process of receiving VC funding to release BrewBot, which is an AI powered small business consultant. In terms of my educational pursuits, like I said, I'm a student here at the University of Utah. I'm an operations and supply chain major. And I work as a student director within the entrepreneurship major as a leader in the Lassonde Founders Program, which is a program I went through when I first joined the university. It's basically a program where you're just starting up and you're a student, and it provides the very basic, very initial resources into the university. In terms of work responsibilities, I wanted to do something that kind of would be able to give back to the community that I had grown to love and care about. And so I joined on at Lassonde Studios as a hospitality manager. That basically means we work right with students. We provide amenities and services to the student residents at the studios, and we work with the School of Business to help implement the programs and events that kind of propel the entrepreneurship activities within the area. Um, and then for personal life, I think it's important to separate work and play as much as you can. But in terms of play, I'm a massive fan of skiing in the outdoors. I'm a big nature fan. It's one of the reasons I came to Utah in the first place. And then I'm also a member of the business a cappella team. So when I started any of this, I tried to start with my company. And I realized very quickly I had time for nothing else. And I also realized that that was damaging to myself as a person. As much as I have great respect for the entrepreneurs who continue and push through and just put so much focus on their company, I don't think I have that personal ability. It's a lot of effort and it's a lot of energy that can really limit you overall as an entrepreneur because it means you're not focusing on anything else. And in that entrepreneurial journey, like our previous host said, it's important to do everything you can in college to experience, to go to the parties, to go to the events, to play sports, to experience college to its fullest while also being an entrepreneur to your fullest. And so there's this quote from Lisa Sugar, the founder of Pop Sugar, that I really like, saying, you have to balance your passions and not your time, because ultimately there are only 24 hours in the day. But you can get a lot done in that time if you're able to properly balance and kind of hone out your different domains. So the way that I found best to balance these domains, and of course, there's different options for anyone at whatever stage of life they're in. But one thing I find very significant as a university student is to allow for a proper intersection of these groups, allowing an overlap as a student entrepreneur, you can combine your educational experience with your work experience, with your company experience, with your friends and your clubs and your groups. These can all find overlaps that allow them to support each other, and allows for kind of growth and progress across all sectors. Uh, when I started off to create my company, like I said, I was super isolated. I didn't talk to anyone about it. I did the thing that every entrepreneur does, keeps the company secret because you're afraid someone's going to steal your multi-million-dollar idea. And I realized that really limited my full utilization of the skills that I'd gained across the journey. Um, because once I started talking to people, once I started getting involved in clubs and groups and working as a student leader, I found myself a lot more capable in how I felt about the business and what other people thought about it. I was able to get my first clients through the university, for other students who had similar goals to me. And it allowed a much more fulfilled experience to kind of grow from this collaboration, this overlap. And so I have a few examples here on personal domain overlap where you can see there's significant improvements from allowing these different domains to have combined focus. So when I started off, for example, with my company, I had nowhere to go, which is always a dangerous and very confusing time when you're starting up your business. But I found that I could apply a lot of the content that I had learned in my class, and then the things I cared about directly to my startup. So I had the great luck to take an entrepreneurship class in my freshman year, and I was paired with a professor who was very experienced. She had had over 30 years of experience working for various startups, and was now helping out the university in their entrepreneurship program. That allowed me to really find some new opportunities by knowing someone, industry veteran, who was able to provide the resources and experiences that made me feel more comfortable with Homebrew. In terms of combining the social life and the education and the and the business, I joined clubs that were related to entrepreneurship, providing a public forum to talk and experience the different aspects of my company, and being able to market myself, to provide for services. And once I met with other student entrepreneurs, I realized I'm not alone in this. I'm not the terrified person, because I'm doing bad with my business. That's just kind of how most entrepreneurship starts. Most businesses start with someone who's trying to make a difference, trying to start something great, but also has a lot of uncertainty and is a little bit scared of where they're going. And being in this entrepreneurial community inspired and motivated me, and it made me a lot more secure in my company. And then finally, I decided after a while, about a year into this whole entrepreneurial journey, to start working with other entrepreneurs at Lasan Studios as a hospitality manager. That was, of course, in part the fact that I needed to help fund my company, and so I got a job. Um, but it also provided significant experience in learning how to manage companies and learning how different small businesses interact and work with each other. And by being able to access the opinions and the feedback from residents, I was able to build a stronger business as a result. It allowed for a deeper understanding of entrepreneurial thinking. And I found that to be even more fulfilling than the paycheck. It served a lot more benefit to the company than just funding. It was also a platform for me to build my products and my services off of. Um, the important thing, I think, when it comes down to it, is if you're balancing the different aspects of your life against your entrepreneurial journey, it's really important to make sure that you have one common theme to keep yourself going along. And that's a lot of making yourself more of an entrepreneur than your company. That same professor who mentored me had a really great quote that has stuck to me today, saying that being a student entrepreneur is all about building your personal entrepreneurial journey, and that the $1 million idea will come in time. That's not to say that you should abandon what you're currently working on and seek out that multi-million-dollar idea. It might form from what you have now. It might be something down the road. But I think the goal that I really like to focus on is to work on yourself as an entrepreneur, just as much as you're working on your company as an entrepreneurial venture. Finding a common thread is so important when you're trying to create an overlap between your domains, because it kind of gives a mission statement to yourself as a person. So I have a few questions that I found vital when I was trying to figure out what kind of entrepreneur I wanted to be. What core beliefs do you hold to your heart? What really matters to you more than anything else? And what are you trying to accomplish in the long run? And from there, what experiences and opportunities do you need to seek out to accomplish these goals? And those are not easy questions. And they're questions that I'm still asking today. They can take a lifetime to answer, but I think that the time that you spend searching for it, in concurrence with the time you spend building your company and building clubs and groups and getting yourself involved, is ultimately time well spent. So, in conclusion, I, despite all I've said on balancing what I've done to have some success, in terms of where I am on my entrepreneurial journey, I have barely started. That's one of the greatest things about being a student entrepreneur, is that there's so much for you to experience and do. Just because, no matter where you are, if you've had 5 years or 20 years of experience, there's still a very long road for you to go down. An entrepreneur is a series of starts over and over again. So, whether you're a student working on their first project or someone who's spent decades working on their, perfect idea for their company, there's always a long journey. But regardless of how much effort and experience you put into it, there's so much value in providing balance and balancing the different domains. But all you have to do is just go and do it. Thank you.
Braeden, thank you. That was amazing. I love to hear more about your journey and a bit in depth into the thinking and the balancing of life and school and social and how even joining clubs or working with entrepreneurs at Lassonde really changed your perspective. And honestly, some of like maybe the fuel for what was driving you towards building Homebrew. Um, for you at least, what were some of the first steps that you had to take when you were putting together initially your thoughts and building Homebrew? I know that you showed us a few questions at the end. Were those driving questions when you initially started, or were those things that you began to think about after you already started taking those initial steps?
Yeah, I when I came up with the idea for Homebrew, it was a lot less of a very, defined concept and more of just a domain that I wanted to get involved in. I've had a lot of interest in business development, but I had no idea where to go. And so I wanted to create kind of an all-encompassing business that had, no scope, no idea, no range. And so I was very lost when I started up the company. Fortunately, like I said, that professor helped me kind of figure out what I cared about in business development, and that really shaped the company. A lot of my personal beliefs on Homebrew were formed by what I want to see for myself, what I want to see for my company. That's one of the nice things about working in a business development startup is you're developing the business as you're developing other businesses, so you get to see kind of comparisons and you're able to filter yourself against other startups.
Do you remember any of those questions that that professor asked you that really made a pivot in your thinking or really stuck with you in terms of uh, changing direction, or at least I know sometimes it's people say that it's better to be in a box than have no constraints whatsoever. Were there any questions that felt like a box that really helped you take those next steps forward?
Absolutely. Yeah. The biggest one was honestly, she wanted to make sure that everything was kind of taken from a very genuine and earnest perspective in entrepreneurship, as opposed to these feelings of grandiosity. I'm going to be the next Bill Gates, the next Steve Jobs. You can't really look at yourself from the start. From the end point, you really need to see yourself as the start of that road. And so, very plainly, she said at the first class, like 99% of your businesses are going to fail. And there's a almost certain point that one of your companies in the future would fail anyways, even if you have success with the first one. And that really takes a scope away from making sure your business is the most successful it can be. Although that's very important, but it also makes sure that you are successful despite your business. Especially as a student entrepreneur, there's a lot of opportunities to fail. And I think in a lot of ways that's a good thing, because it allows you to have the cushion to keep going and to repivot, because it focuses on you as a person as opposed to you as a representative of your business.
I love that. I saw a quote yesterday that I sent to a friend, and it was, I might butcher it, but um, the purpose of the quote was not to find the meaning of life, but to make your life's purpose creating things with meaning. And I think that that helps in terms of, as they say, most businesses that you create will fail. One of our speakers tomorrow, John Rush, he talks about that extensively on Twitter and LinkedIn, and that his primary focus for all of his ideas are idea validity to make sure that there's an actual demand and a customer before building the product, because he has so many ideas and almost all of them have failed, but a few of them have done very well. But that testing the idea and really getting feedback from other people is almost as important as building it, because like your professor said, that most of the businesses will fail, and like utmost, not utterly. At the end of the day, the success of the business is not the final goal. It is kind of contributing and creating value that will ultimately give you success as a business.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I wanted to start Homebrew off of. The failure that I'd experienced as a tech repair company, like, it's devastating. You don't want to see your company fail, but you also learn so much from every experience, and the customer data you collect, in the understanding of what current trends are and how you're going to be able to market those trends. There's a lot to be gained from your failures, even if you don't want them to fail.
What were your first steps for building the tech repair company? Were you repairing specifically laptops or?
Yeah, so it was very simple because I have a big passion. I like fixing up old electrical components, so I'd fix up Game Boys and Walkmans that I'd find on eBay or in thrift stores. And like a lot of small businesses, it didn't come from a desire to create a company. It came from a personal passion. I built a lot of homebrew around that concept because I found, when companies are being started up, especially with the goal of remaining small businesses, it's not people with MBAs from Harvard or Stanford. It's usually people who have a very deep-seated passion and a lot of experience within their field, but not a lot of experience with business. And that's kind of where I was, where I was very kind of experienced with fixing up old technology, but I had no idea how to actually market it and make it an actual, livable job.
Got it. And so where do you feel that you are at in terms of your own progression and the steps that you're taking? What are some of the next steps, while we have a few minutes here left? What are some of
Sure.
the next steps that you're taking? What are ones that feel like they're within the next 2 or 3 feet of you, and what are some that you're looking forward to that are maybe a little bit farther ahead?
Sure. Well, our current step is to try to secure some capital. We have the current product designs up for one of our newest products. I had mentioned BrewBot is a virtual AI small business consultant. So, kind of the goal of that is to really focus on reducing the uncertainty for small businesses and give them kind of a guide in a conversational format that allows them to really be a lot more certain and have the right steps to help build up their business. So we're currently assembling some pitch decks for that, and we're talking to some VC firms and trying to move ourselves forward with that. But we've had some great support from Lassonde and giving us the stability to move forward. And I'm really looking forward to what comes next. So that's our big one, VC establishment. But hopefully in the next few years, we're going to be building our team, trying to release that product on time, and continue to provide these services for small businesses.
No, I love that. That's really awesome to hear. And it looks like I'm just switching Sterling to attendee. That is the only feature that the Zoom webinar does not have, which is a waiting room for panelists. So everyone, I think it's kind of a lovely timer check from everyone. We get to see a friendly face that we'll be seeing momentarily. But so Sterling's just in the waiting room, who will be on our next speaker. But one of the questions I had was regarding a lot of the businesses that you see around Lassonde and your fellow students. What are some issues that you see they're facing, or maybe some challenges that they're facing that you are thinking about a lot in terms of your own product, and maybe some trends that you're seeing where you haven't developed it yet, but you're thinking about how it could be incorporated into BrewBot or other things that you're doing?
Absolutely. There is currently, I think, in a lot of ways, entrepreneurship is the best it's ever been, where we have so many resources and communities for entrepreneurs to really grow and experience, kind of starting up companies in a safe environment. But I think there's also been recently kind of unhealthy expectation for entrepreneurs to really, start up something and within 5 or 6 months get acquired for an insane amount of money and then do great. And some people do that, but I think a lot of people starting up their first venture get really discouraged when that doesn't happen. I know I did. You expect your company to be a unicorn within the first 2 months, and I think that's a really unrealistic expectation. One of my goals, I think, after we get BrewBot off the ground and into the public's hands, we'd really like to start working on services and building a community, a bit of a forum for entrepreneurs that kind of promotes healthy growth. Because if you're really seeking for that rapid development without any bases, it means you're gonna, maybe have the tower topple over when it gets a little too high. So I'm a big supporter of growing your company healthily, both as the entrepreneur and the business. And that's what I try to advocate to all my clients.
Nice. Slow, steady growth. It seems to be a trend we see everywhere. You know, it fits perfectly with the theme of this year, STRT Summit, progression and taking those small steps and seeing how they compound over time.
Absolutely.
Braeden, thank you so much for joining us and for talking to us about Homebrew and your story. It's always great to hear from young entrepreneurs, especially you at the university right now. I know you're right in our backyard, so we'll have our eye on you, and we hope to see you soon.
Happy to hear it. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good night.
You too. Bye bye.